Yeah.
So how did you see it?
I had the task of making the machine live up to the sentence, "You've never seen a machine like this before in your life." So that was, you can say it was a marketing ploy, right? So the idea was that people come in and say, okay, what is this thing, and why should I spend so much money on it? You know, what are these 25-year-olds doing that is better than, you know, Cray and the big boys haven't been doing for decades? And the line was going to be, "You've never seen a machine like this before in your life." And then it was clear, you know, if you bring them into a machine room and the customer says, "Oh, you know, it looks exactly like the refrigerator I've got at home," then you've lost already. You know, you've got to convince this person that it's smarter than your refrigerator, and refrigerators in those days were pretty dumb. so it had to be something that was drop dead, that really looked like something completely new. And then I, coming from a design background, growing up with sort of a Bauhaus father, architecture, urban planner, I had drilled into me from day one this idea that form has to follow function, no decoration is evil, and it has to, design has to really explicate and explain the function of the machine. And that was a huge conundrum, because if I give you a chip, if I give you a board, I mean, probably even you have design chips, design boards. If I give one to you, you can probably say, well, here's the processors, here's the memory, but there's no way you're going to be able to tell me, well, this is exactly how this chip works. And I can tell just by looking at it. You can't, because the functionality is buried in microscopic levels that no human can see, and it's probably also complicated and tangled enough so you can't sit there and say, well, you know, the trace goes from here to here and then it goes to there, and therefore I think it's doing that. I mean, can you look at a VLSI drawing or a chip or a board and say, okay, I can tell how it works?
No, not at all.
Can anyone do that? I don't think so.
But you can look at the connection machine and see how it views the world. It's
right.
Cubes of cubes. It's got lights that blink, that show things are being active and inactive at different times. It looks not like a direct analogy to anything that existed before, but it communicated something.
And the idea was that it should communicate, this is an electronic brain, this could potentially develop into a living, thinking machine somehow. So there were ideas from you, from Carl, from Danny. I know those were you were the three people that I explicitly can attribute certain ideas to. And I remember Carl, for instance, talking about, he has this fantasy of the machine as this big cloud of lights that are blinking as they send their messages to someone else.
In terms of the design of the connection machine, since I was on it early days with Danny at MIT, all sorts of things came and went, whether it was memory, or there was routers, or there was CPUs. The only thing that was ever constant were the lights. We needed blinking lights, and that was Carl Feynman. And I think that's the distinctive design element of this, was just a sea of lights that was indicating what it was doing. But it turns out that's not true. The lights would mostly be in the idle loop, and Cliff Lasser, always sort of the wry one, he called that loop random and pleasing, and that's become the distinctive look of the connection machine. The other person that did things with the lights, we only had the first four running in the lab. So everything was wired up with oscilloscopes and all these people, and there was this lab, and Carl Sims came and he wrote the first computer program that actually ran on the computers itself when we had four, and he made it a little ticker tape that bring over words, and he called us down and we saw it, and it says, "I blink, therefore I am." So that was the self-recognition of the lights and the design aspect being so important to how we thought of the thing that we were building.
So can you be more explicit about why the lights caught people's imagination and why it was so important that Carl said, no matter what we change, we have to retain the lights?
I think it was why the lights? I think it's the dreaminess of it. I mean, we were doing something much more than just building a functional thing that would sell well. The idea was to build something that would be seen as kind of an interesting thing to be near, something that you'd want to go and discourse with. And computers in those days looked like, well, refrigerators. Maybe they'd have an on-off switch and a little light that would say something. But it was long before, or in science fiction, you had the lights on Star Trek and lots of switches. But all of those actually on real computers went away. And so the idea of having the lights come back, and I'm sure that was just hell to try to design around. I remember the discussions about trying to make it so it wasn't just a radio beacon that would just go and flood all of the radio and TV stations in a neighborhood. How do you go and have exposed electronics? And that was some of the design challenges that Tamiko and all sorts of others had to go and wrestle with.